On today's show, the Capitals fall in Game 3 to the Habs and they lose Logan Thompson to injury.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals as they fall in game number 3 in Montreal. I think we all kind of saw this coming. I think it would have been too easy for the Capitals to just keep winning and sweep the Habs. What did we learn in Game 3? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about how the Capitals showed some fight in this game, but it ultimately wasn't enough. The will to win for the Habs was that much greater, I think, than the Capitals, and ultimately the Habs were willing to do whatever it took to win this game. What was that? A bit later, I'll talk about a worst case scenario as Logan Thompson leaves the game due to an injury. What's the latest? But just to get it going here, the Capitals, in fact, do fall in game number 3 in Montreal. And there was a lot of interesting storylines surrounding this game. Was this going to be the game that Arbor Xhekaj was in the mix? And as it turns out, yes, he was, because they were looking for that deterrent factor, as the perception was that the Capitals were getting away with a lot of physicality, and it didn't appear that the Habs really had a whole lot of answers. So they did change the momentum, and it's interesting that Arbor Xhekaj was in the mix in the game tonight, and I think it was just that deterrent factor, as it was Josh Anderson, who is the guy that I think gives the Capitals the most fits as far as physicality is concerned. And I'll talk about the physicality a little bit later in this segment, but let's just dive into the game tonight. A rough outing for the Capitals. And, you take a look at it, there was promise. The Capitals getting on the board, but then the Habs had the answer, and it was a back and forth and back and forth. And I think, the desperation of the Canadiens was evident tonight. And they had the Canadiens, they had the Montreal fans in the house. I think that is ultimately one of the other elements that isn't something that's easily quantifiable. But of course, teams, generally speaking, play that much better than when they're playing at home, of course. And that was evident tonight. So we take a look at it, a tough game to discuss as the Caps ventured to Bell Center, with high hopes, holding a 2-0 series lead. And, up until this point, it seemed like everything was going very well. In game number 2 in particular, I think the Capitals grew quite a bit than they did in game number 1, where the third period was difficult. But, you take a look at it, I think that the Capitals went into game 3 trying to show some restraint. And that restraint was difficult. And I think that when the Capitals tried to get more involved physically, well, it was too late. And Cole Caulfield and the offensive firepower of the Habs was just too much. But unfortunately, what transpired was a tough outing for the Capitals and a disappointing 6-3 loss. And a significant injury to Logan Thompson that I'll talk about a little bit later. But defensive struggles were something that was apparent, and something that's been, the strong suit of the Capitals pretty much all season and even into the playoffs. But the Capitals came off that dominant performance in games 1 and 2, but tonight was a completely different story. The crowd at Bell Center fueled the Canadiens, who capitalized on every opportunity and maintained control for most of the game. And, that's what it's about. It was that desperation mode, which I spoke of, and the Capitals struggled in most every metric in the defensive department, and they struggled to string together a full 60 minutes of disciplined play. And, just that desperation of the Canadiens, I think, is kind of what triggered the Capitals into a bit of a fight or flight mode, if you will. Their defensive lapses, including turnovers, failed clears, and lack of coverage allowed the Habs to create easy scoring chances, resulting in an alarming shot disparity of 40-19. That is not how you are going to win hockey games. And, like I say, it was just the Habs' will to win. And, that was a bit of a departure than, like I say, what we saw in the first two games where it was more even out. But, you take a look at it, I guess the final tally was 40-21 shots on goal, Habs over Caps. But, that was their ability. They were getting shots on net. And why is that? Their hunger, which I spoke of, but also the flaws in the Capitals defense, that they were able to get those shots through. And that, I think, is where the Capitals really, really struggled in this game, and something that is going to need to get cleaned up before the next game on Sunday. I think the Capitals are sitting in a good position now with a 2-1 series lead. But what happens if the Habs even it up in the next game? That is where things can become a bit more worrisome. But tensions did flare as discipline falters. And, you take a look at this. Tom Wilson in this game, in this series, for the most part, has shown quite a bit of restraint. Josh Anderson just pushing Tom Wilson on his back, folding like a deck of cards. And you know that either something's wrong with Tom Wilson or he's just really trying to keep his cool. And that only went for so long, as Tom Wilson got into a fight on the bench. And then there was the funny moments, him crying like a crybaby. That Tom Wilson, when he is angry, his sarcasm is something to behold. And it's no secret that the rivalry between the Caps and Montreal has been intense during this series. Now, as we headed into the second intermission, that is where things boiled over. The play was done. But I think that, the frustration within the Capitals and the frustration also with the Habs was at a breaking point. The perception was, like I said earlier in the show, that the Habs felt like the Capitals were getting away, kind of just pushing them around. And they had had enough. And I think that Tom Wilson had had enough from getting pushed around by Josh Anderson. And not just that, you saw Matt Roy getting pushed around. You saw Chikrin, these different kind of players that they wanted to insert themselves physically. And I think that that is ultimately what happened. And the pushing and shoving after whistles escalated, leading to a fight between Tom Wilson and Josh Anderson in the game. And, that was one of the things that those guys go way back, and there's a history. And if there's a guy in the NHL that can stand up to Tom Wilson, it is Josh Anderson. Pound for pound, pretty even. If they do drop the mitts in this series, it'll be interesting to see how it fares. It was more of a shoving match, I guess I would say, is what I noticed in the melee there before the intermission. But if it's a center ice, drop the mitts, that'll be an interesting thing to see there. Now, both players ended up with misconducts, and to make it worse, the Caps' lack of discipline led to 5 penalties throughout the night. So it was a tough outing for the Capitals, and technical glitches, watching it at home, where all of a sudden my feed got cut out, and I'm like, well, this is not optimal timing. So tried to piece. There was about a good 5 minutes in the game that I was not able to watch just due to technical difficulties. But at the end of the day, that's a part of the nature of everything. But, you take a look at it, those are the things that they're going to need to clean up. I think that that physicality that was right before the intermission there, that I think that was a good thing. I think that, that helped get the team together. But at the end of the day, when you're spending a lot of time in the penalty box, that gives the other team the advantage, as was evidenced tonight. That teams, I know that physicality and all that can get entered into the mix, but you need to play discipline and pick your fights, if you will. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to mark up the Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson thing, I'm going to just mark it up to entertainment quality, if you will. So I think that those are things that they need to work on. And the physicality, I think it kind of makes it just one of the fun aspects of the games. But, as we take a look at it, we knew it wasn't going to be easy. There was the rumblings out there about Arbor Jackeye, is he going to be in the mix? And, it was like the Montreal media referring to him as the nuclear option and all those kind of things. That it is a bit interesting that he didn't get involved as much as I thought he would. But I think that him being in the lineup and the confidence of having him in the lineup, I think, is ultimately what made the Montreal Canadiens play that much more confidently. So as the Capitals prepare for the next game, they're going to just have to play more disciplined. I know that's difficult when you have people shoving you to the ice, and pick your fights as best you can. Because the one thing we don't want to have happen in this series is for it to get evened up, or even for the Habs to get ahead in this series. The Capitals played really good in games number 1 and 2. They just need to batten down the hatches so they can get back to winning really great hockey games. All right, so coming up here after the break, one of the worst case scenarios happened tonight. Logan Thompson, who missed a substantial amount of time, got injured and left the game and did not return. What's the latest? I'll discuss straight ahead. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with a Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required, just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite TV shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode, advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds that you need to stay competitive. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of a cost in a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easy to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you go. Head to Amazon.com/FireLockedOn to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in the second segment here, talking about what I'm going to say is one of the worst case scenarios that could happen to the Capitals, that they played very well in games number 1 and 2 due to the excellent net minding of Logan Thompson. A good story. He got injured on April 2nd and did not play another game of the regular season, was thrust into action in game 1 of the playoffs and played well in game 1 and very well in game number 2. And in game 3, he got injured. And, well, even the worst part, if you can believe it, is it was due to friendly fire. More specifically, Dylan Strome just skating right into him. And Logan Thompson was in noticeable pain. So not optimal, I guess is what I'm going to say, but it is what it is. Charlie Lindgren came in the game and played well, but there is I'm going to be honest with you, some uncertainty now for the Capitals as Logan Thompson was the guy to get them through games number 1 and 2. And to be clear here, I don't think that if Logan Thompson played the entire game, the Capitals would have rallied and won this game. I think they still would have lost. But just based on how difficult of a time that Logan Thompson had leaving the ice, I don't think, and this is just me, just the sight test and just calling it as I see it. I don't think he will be back for a while. And if they told me that he was not going to come back for the remainder of this Stanley Cup playoff run, I would not be too surprised, as he had a hard time even putting weight on his legs. He needed assistance. But, again, I'm not a doctor. Maybe it's something that they can tape up, I guess. I don't know. But in any event, it is not optimal because it is the next man up, and the next men up are Charlie Lindgren and ostensibly Clay Stevenson. Caps Nation, hit me up on Twitter or on YouTube. What is your confidence level in net now that Logan Thompson is out of the mix potentially, and it is Charlie Lindgren and it is Clay Stevenson? Not even just the stability in net, but what does that mean for the Capitals? How confidently will they play with Logan not into the mix? Let's take a deeper dive in the second segment into a disaster, if you will, with Logan Thompson leaving the game. And with just 6 minutes, 37 seconds left in the third period, things in this game took a turn for the worse. Like I said, Dylan Strome crashed into Thompson while trying to stop a shot from Montreal's Slafkovsky. And one of the things was that Logan Thompson was playing way over on the left-hand side. That I don't think that Dylan Strome was anticipating him being there. What he was trying to do, Dylan Strome that is he was trying to stop Slafkovsky as he was driving hard for the net, and it was just the wrong place at the wrong time, I guess. And it wasn't just that. In this game, Logan Thompson had a pretty rough go of it, as there was a puck that hit him. He was, brushed into, or he had that stick that hit him. It was a bit difficult. There was times earlier in the game that I thought he was going to leave. And then you take a look at the nature of his injury that happened in the Hurricanes game where he missed all that time. That this is a bit different, though. I think that there was talk out there that it could have been there was a mark on the back of his head. But when you watched the close-up from the video camera in the net or behind the net, wherever it is, he was kind of looked like reaching for his leg. So it is interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the final ruling is now. But right after the hit, Thompson instinctively clutched his head, but it seems his lower body was the main issue. And maybe it was both. Like I said, he had got hit in the head earlier in the game. So maybe it was even a more worst case scenario that it was 2 injuries. He needed assistance from his teammates and assistant trainer Jason Service, putting minimal weight on his left leg. So, like I say, it is not optimal, of course, but, to be clear here, things did not go well in net for Montreal either, which I'll talk about in a bit here. Now, this is a tough blow, especially considering Thompson just returned, like I said, from missing the last 7 games of the regular season due to that ambiguous upper body injury after taking a puck to the mask against the Hurricanes. I guess we could say maybe it was concussion related, but in the playoffs so far, Thompson has been fire, allowing just 3 goals in 2 games. And like I say, there wasn't a lot of time left on the clock. I don't think that even if Thompson was in for the remainder of the game, the Capitals would have rallied. It just wasn't the Capitals' night. I hate to paint it with that brush, but it wasn't their night. And it was because, like I said, a poor defensive showing, like I talked about in the first segment there, and, just the will of the Canadiens to win. But John Carlson talked about it by just saying, quote, "It's just a crappy play. You never want to see anybody go down. Hopefully he's okay," unquote. To quote John, it is pretty crappy. Do I think he's going to be okay? Probably not this year. Again, this is just my knee-jerk reaction to just what I saw here not long ago. But before his night ended, Thompson had another scare, like I talked about late in the first period when he went down after taking a stick to the mask from Nick Suzuki. Now, he also seemed to take a shot in the neck in the second period, which I spoke about, which left him with a visible bruise later in the game. So, you talk about the head, you talk about the leg. It could be both of those things. Now, Charlie Lindgren also stepped in, like I said, allowing 1 goal on 5 shots. And, you take a look at Charlie Lindgren last season in the playoffs, and they got swept. And I know this isn't the same Capitals team, but I'm going to be honest with you here, Capitals fans. I asked you about your confidence level. I'm going to go ahead and tell you my confidence level. It is mid to low right now. That I think Charlie Lindgren is a good netminder, but kind of what we saw from him towards the tail end of the regular season. I know everyone wanted to be dismissive of that. No one was really caring how they play. That Charlie is good, but he is not as good as Logan Thompson, in my opinion. But then if you even want to go down a bit further than that, it's Clay Stevenson, and ultimately we don't know what we have in him. He only has 1 NHL game under his belt. But unfortunately, head coach Spencer Carberry did not provide an update on Thompson after the game. So we're all just left wondering, I guess, until maybe tomorrow or Sunday. But in any event, we know that it's not good. Like I referenced earlier in this segment, it also wasn't good for Montreal as they lost their starting netminder, Sam Montembeault, midway through the second period and didn't disclose the details of his injury either, did the Canadiens press. So a tough go of it, and I think that Sam Montembeault's injury is a bit more of a question mark. I didn't see anything that clearly happened, but in any event, he was not good enough to play, but it doesn't matter because their backup netminder was enough to win the game. So you take a look at the Capitals, losing Logan Thompson is not ideal, but they have to regroup. They have to prepare as their next game number 4 is on Sunday. So Capitals fans, that is where we are at right now. The state of the team is, I don't think, there's a part of me that was hopeful that the Capitals would be able to sweep it. But in the back of my mind, I kind of knew it was going to be a long shot. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about that the Capitals did show some fight, but it wasn't enough. What do they need to bring in game number 4 so they can get back into the win column? I'll discuss straight ahead. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets. Even for those must-see matchups, prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer. With last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. So save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, shows the total cost upfront, no surprise fees at checkout. The app even shows you panoramic seat views, so you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So in the final segment of the show, we're talking about the fight that the Capitals did show, but it was not enough. There was some offense. There was some moments in the game that I thought the Capitals would have the answer. Jacob Chychrun scoring a really great goal. Connor McMichael, Alex Ovechkin, those were the fist pumping moments. Jacob Chikrin, three shots on goal. And there was a lot of excitement, that there was the potential, there was the makings. I mean, the Capitals, they scored 3 goals, but the Habs, they were the better team as they scored 6 goals. So there was that pushback, there was the fight, but not enough. And why is it? Well, that the Habs applied more pressure, right? And the Capitals weren't able to meet them where they were at. And I think that any time that the Habs scored a goal, they just kind of vacuumed up that momentum, and just is what really propelled them forward. But as we talk about it, there was a glimmer of hope early on as the Caps managed to respond quickly after each of Montreal's first goals, thanks to Connor McMichael, Jacob Chikrin, and Alex Ovechkin. The Connor McMichael one in particular, where he was kind of pounding the glass, that was one of the moments at home that kind of had me just fist pumping, like, yes, yes. I don't know if you guys do that at home. Even at home, I'm just like, if they score a goal, I can just feel it. And there were a lot of those moments in the game. But you could kind of just tell the direction that this game was going to go. And sometimes when I make those predictions, sometimes they're true, sometimes I'm surprised. But tonight, it was in the wind, it was in the air that I thought the Habs would take this one. But as the Habs regained control and the Caps couldn't find their offensive rhythm after that, goals from Dvorak, Slavkovsky, and Newhook left the Capitals zero chance to respond as the game slipped away. And like I talked about in the second segment, it was Logan Thompson. That was another big thing that made it slip out of the Capitals' hands. That is definitely, I think, put a hole in the side of their tire as far as their confidence is concerned when he left the game. But to be clear here, I'm not cutting any excuses. That happened later in the game. So that fight, that is what we want. And we did see that from that goal scoring. But I think in order for the Capitals to win in game number 4, they're going to have to get back to basics. They're going to have to get back to what they did in game number 2 and play a more disciplined game. And I know physicality, and I know I bang the drum on physicality all the time, but what did we see? Is that the Capitals spending a lot of time in the penalty box, and then you see that the Habs use that to their advantage. That we definitely cannot let that continue. And if you take a look at the advanced analytics from the game, the hits, you take a look at the Canadiens, 45 hits to the Capitals 26. And those are the kind of things that can get really drawn into focus when you're playing in the games of these kind of magnitudes. So even though the Capitals did have a pretty good pushback in this game, like I say, they scored, the Habs scored, the Caps would score again, that fight was not enough. And a bit different, I guess, than I would say in games number 1 and 2. But if you take a look at the first 2 games of the series, the momentum was definitely in the Capitals' favor, save the third period in game number 1. So this is, like I talked about in a previous show or a previous podcast, it's not going to get any easier for the Capitals. Say they do make it past this round, the next team that they play is going to even be that much more difficult, of course, because they moved on to the next round. The Capitals are not going to be able to cut themselves excuses. They're not going to say we didn't have Logan Thompson or Protas or Faravari, or we were playing in a building that was really, really loud and it was overwhelming. That's what it's going to be. This is the work that was put in. These are the players on the ice that got the Capitals into the position that they're in right now, winning the Metro, winning the Eastern Conference, that they are just going to have to dig deep. This team has shown fight all season long during the regular season. I don't want to think that losing a single game in this series is going to derail them. It did, however, leave a sour taste in my mouth. A 6-3 final is not good, and pretty lopsided, all things considered. That I think that the Capitals need to establish themselves in game number 4 and pick your battles. I mean, if someone's shoving you around, I don't think that you can just let that go unchecked. See Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson. It's just like holding it in. It's not bothering me. It's not bothering me. Fist flying. It's bothering me. That I think that that is what's difficult. But I think that, in a lot of ways, the Habs got their way. That they tried to bait them into arguments, into physical activity, and that is, at least in part, I'm going to say, part of the secret sauce of the Habs in game number 3. Capitals got to learn what to do to gain the advantage more quickly in game number 4, and just try to play a bit more of a disciplined game. But it's going to be interesting to see now what Marty St. Louis does. Like, oh, I had Jack Eye in there and we won. Probably going to have him in game number 4 as well. So you take a look at it. My take on it: play more disciplined game. But if physicality meets you, then I guess you have to face it face on. But hopefully the Capitals learn something in game number 3, and they can get back into the win column in game number 4. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.